This is BBC Television.
This is BBC Television.
Mä tunnen sinut, pikkusisko.
Now on BBC One, the start of a new 5-minute cartoon series featuring Fred
vasta kohdattiin. Niin monin kasvoin ennenkin sä vierelläni maannut oot.
The family is one of the most powerful forces in nature. For the past 4 years, we've been filming some of the most celebrated yet endangered species of animal on Earth, revealing...
As you can see, the BBC have been around for nearly 100 years, producing material for radio and television and broadcasting in nearly all 198 countries in the world. This TV series and its predecessors have pre-sales and total sales for the last 4 years of a total of £1 billion. To add this, the BBC has been at the forefront of technological innovations, not only in radio and television, but they also produced the first home mass-produced PC in 1981 and the first HD TV broadcast in 1985. And another one of their major forgotten innovations is that they were the first national TV service in the world to hand out video cameras to the members of the public and ask them to make little video diaries of their lives. So it could be actually said that the BBC were the inventors of what has become known today as YouTube, except they launched it on the wrong platform.
Alright, so here we are in front of the elephants. The cool thing about these guys is that they have really long fronts, and that's cool. And that's pretty much all there is to say.
How small the team really was. We basically had 2 sysadmins, more or less, 2 software architects dealing with scalability issues. We had 2 feature developers doing everything that the users see. We had 2 network engineers building a network that pushed tens of gigabits per second, and 1 DBA, and we hadn't been bought by Google, so no chefs yet. And if you think I'm kidding about the drinking or sleeping parts, and no.
YouTube's rapid rise was so pronounced that Time magazine put it on the front cover of 2006. And as the front page said, the success of YouTube came from the fact that it made you control the information age. And even though the majority of its content for the majority of its years is similar to the videos you see here, it is now watched 1 billion hours per day all over the world and is now worth anywhere between $70 to $90 billion. And the purpose of this video is to examine how YouTube became the more successful brand in the digital age, applying the theories of Clayton Christensen's The Innovators Dilemma, Chris Anderson's The Longer Tail, and Michael Porter's theory of the 5 forces. But I also will be covering other contributing factors which are not covered by these theorists. The first theorist I'll look at is Clayton Christensen's The Innovator's Dilemma, and also his follow-up book, The Innovator's Solution. In a nutshell, Christensen's theories in both books are based on an evolution of Tom Peters' book In Search of Excellence, but with the major exception that instead of a company looking inwards onto itself and its core values and strengths, it concentrates on creating what he calls disruptive innovation, which is exactly what YouTube did when it created a low entry level channel for people to put up videos that could be seen all over the world. And the BBC had no idea that this market existed until YouTube became such a huge success rapidly within the space of a year and a half. By simply creating a website portal where anybody with no technical skills could upload a video from any source, from anywhere in the world, to be seen by anyone, anywhere in the world, and all in the blink of an eyelid. While the BBC made the mistake of using traditional production line processes and keeping the video only for broadcast on terrestrial television.
It reminds me of Steve Jobs in a garage somewhere.
It happened in January of 2005. It was up in my place in the city in San Francisco. And we were having a dinner party and people had digital cameras there, and we were taking normal digital photos as well as movies. And when we try to share these The photos, we found it very easy to share the photos with one another. But when we tried to share the movies, we tried to email it back, but it just kept getting rejected, bounced back. We tried to upload, and people have different video types, video codecs that you have to download, different software. So we sort of took a look at, with all the digital cameras now, with phones being able to take movies, but this was going to be more and more of a problem for other people, and we try to make and simplify this process to make it as easy as possible to share these videos online.
YouTube appears to be the ideal example of digital disruption or innovation, but Christensen's thesis is not without its critics, and for good reason, as we shall see in the next clip, which covers the court case between Viacom and Google, where Viacom was sued for copyright infringement for a total of $1.5 billion.
In the information age, content, in fact, all intellectual property is big business. With technology making professional and casual piracy easier by the day, protecting copyrighted material is harder than ever. Just recently, Viacom lost its 3-year-old $1 billion lawsuit against YouTube. Here are the facts of the case. Viacom, the company that owns Paramount Pictures, MTV, Comedy Central, Nick, BET, and a bunch of other networks, sued YouTube, which is owned by Google, for $1 billion in damages, claiming that YouTube encouraged users to upload Viacom's copyrighted material. The judge ruled in favor of Google, saying that YouTube is protected under the safe harbor provisions of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act because it instantly responded to Viacom's request to take down unlicensed content. This was a big win for online services companies like YouTube, Facebook, MySpace, and Yahoo, but the fight is far from over. Viacom is going to appeal.
This is a very important case because it's about whether somebody can have a business model based on copyright infringement. Viacom's allegations here, and it found very powerful evidence supporting this, was that YouTube very deliberately built its business based on stolen content to attract an audience, and it worked. It attracted a massive audience to this stolen content, and under the judge's decision here, that's fine as long as you do one thing and one thing only, which is respond to a specific notice about a specific video that's infringing. But of course, there are many thousands of infringing videos, and you can't, and it's like a game of whack-a-mole. When somebody sends a notice about one video and it comes down, dozens more spring up in its place.
Even though Christensen offers some admirable ideas, in his book, The Innovators Dilemma, it's interesting to note that he mentions the word law 21 times, and never in the context of national law or international law. And essentially, he ignores a lot of socio-economic and political factors that have affected the rise and fall of some of the ideas that he proposes. In fact, if anyone was to look deeply at the history of American business in the last 30 to 40 years, one would find that you need to really have on side a good lawyer.
Long before the economic meltdown, the story of one woman who tried to warn about the threat to the financial system.
She saw something that people either had not seen or refused to see, and she tried to sound the warning. Nobody listened.
Before the toxic assets poisoned the economy, she warned of their danger.
And that made her the enemy of a very, very large number of people.
She would fight an epic battle with one of the most powerful men in Washington.
They were all part of a very concerted effort to shut her up and to shut her down. And they did, in fact, shut her up and shut her down.
Coupled with that poisoned political atmosphere in the late 90s, if you get time to look, you'll see that most of the most successful companies today have been embroiled in huge legal cases against one another, particularly over intellectual property. While at the same time traditional media has been hogtied by national and international law, the new digital media companies have not.
Newsfeed's exponential growth was spurred on by the fact that existing laws didn't hold internet companies liable for all the content being posted on their sites.
So Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act is the provision which allows the internet economy to grow and thrive. And Facebook is one of the principal beneficiaries of this provision. It says, don't hold this internet company responsible if some idiot says something violent on the site. Don't hold the internet company responsible if somebody publishes something that creates conflict, that violates the law. It's the quintessential provision that allows them to say, don't blame us.
So it was up to Facebook to make the rules.
To my view, a lot of our contemporary political crisis derives from an abandonment of the idea of moral progress. So when the country was founded in the 18th century, its framers subscribed to an idea that progress is moral. Enlightenment philosophers, like the guys who drafted the founding documents of the United States, didn't necessarily share that particular Christian notion of a journey from sin to salvation, but they understood progress, and the United States in its founding as an experiment would lead to political progress because it was designed to improve the lives of the most people, that people would act in a sense of a common endeavor as a republic, that our obligations would be to one another in a form of community, and that we should understand achievement as moral progress. That changed over the course of the 19th century when progress came to have a real technological cast. If you think about the railroad, the telegraph, the camera, people began to think about progress as advancing like a train on a linear track, and each machine would make the world better because things would go faster and goods would become cheaper. And very quickly, that idea of moral progress was replaced by progress as prosperity. Innovation, historically, as a word, means progress without any concern for morality. Innovation, in an 18th century sense, is bad. Innovation is novelty for its own sake. Like, just invent it, and who cares what the consequences are? By the 1980s, there's such a kind of reckless heedlessness in American businesses. It's the kind of the sort of mergers age, the kind of like Wall Street grubbiness, that kind of like that Michael Douglas movie moment, right? Like the greed is good.
The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all of its forms. Greed for life, for money, for love, knowledge, has marked the upward surge of mankind, and greed, you mark my words, will not only save Teldar Paper, but that other malfunctioning corporation called the USA. Thank you very much.
Now we move on to The Longer Long Tail by Chris Anderson, which as the book cover describes, the endless choices creating unlimited demand. And I actually think this really does apply to YouTube and its effect on disrupting digital media worldwide. Because again, to use the BBC as an example, in 2006 the BBC created a broadcast service called BBC Three for 18 to 30-year-olds. By 2016 February, they had to put it offline and put it online on the internet because of cost cutting. Whereas YouTube's ratings at the time increased because they sort of defeated the Pareto rule, where essentially what they do is they produce small items over a longer period, and therein their market increase shares due to the volume that they get over time. My business plan is to build on what you just saw and to distill the knowledge I gather from while doing my Masters into a script for a book and documentary series that looks at how the internet is impacting on how people communicate with one another. Because of technology and AI, all forms of media are going through a revolution right now.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, Killmonger was right, or Ben Carson is in the sunken place, or, how about this, simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. That's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. It may sound basic, but how we move forward in the age of information is going to be the difference between whether we survive or whether we become some kind of fucked up dystopia. Thank you, and stay woke, bitch.